Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Hi, everybody. This is episode 130, believe it or not, of the Near Memo. This week, we're all back together. The band is back together. And we are going to be talking about Google using clicks, behavioral signals in search rankings, which was a very hot topic over the course of the last week or so. We're going to be talking about Google's review fraud detection and its kind of honesty or dishonesty about what it does. And then finally, ChatGPT and Bard plugins and what that suggests about the future of search, or one branch of the future of search. So, David, why don't you tell us, I mean, everybody sort of knows this issue already, but for years, Google denied that behavioral signals and clicks in particular had any impact on rankings. And lo and behold, the trial reveals that that was not true.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously Google's been fighting tooth and nail in all of these, with all of these motions to try not to have to disclose this stuff, or at the very least disclose it behind some sort of legal veil of secrecy. And they've failed in many cases to do so. I don't know to what extent this, the fact that they had to admit that they do use clicks in terms of determining rankings. Like, I don't know how much that is a trade secret among other people who are trying to build search engines. I think that seems, to me, it seems to have been a pretty obvious ranking signal for quite some time. And it's also a very logical ranking signal in terms of, at the very least, sort of testing results, that you cycle into people's top 3 or top 6 or top 8, and then sort of testing the click-through rate to see if that's a better result than the one that was there previously. I mean, it's like a best practice in terms of user experience. So I don't think it's sort of totally earth-shattering in terms of being a trade secret, but it just, again, it's just one more instance of Google, in previous statements, Google potentially either being duplicitous or so narrowly defining the scope of their answer that it actually is misleading to people who are hearing that answer. And we saw this also with, which we talked about a few weeks ago on the podcast, in terms of Google's advice not to prune content that isn't getting any views. Again, that's just not good SEO advice. And so I think it's something that those of us who have been in the space for quite a while, have kind of learned to, at the very least, take everything Google says with a grain of salt, and at worst, understand that they are saying these things for self-motivational purposes, and that you just have to do your own research and look at the results that your clients are dealing with, and try to interpret why those things are there. In many cases, if there's not a discernible reason that a business with a weaker link profile or a weaker review profile or whatever is there, it's possible that clicks explain a huge chunk of that. And that's one of the reasons that back in the day, when I was still running the local search ranking factors report, like, that's really a big reason that I added the sort of behavioral signals category, is that it explains a lot of the variance in terms of being a much more of a black box than these very obvious, sort of empirically observable signals are. So,
yeah, this information came out, I think, in documents that were presented to witnesses, either for their explanation or, in some cases, maybe upon cross-examination. And so this was all, as lawyers say, memorialized in documents, and then the witnesses had to comment on it, and they couldn't really contradict what the documents said, and the documents were pretty explicit. And what was interesting to me, and this is a little bit of a digression away from the SEO angle, is that this whole issue came out because the allegation is that Google needed these default search deals in order to amass this click data, which would then give them advantages versus rivals in terms of search quality. And so that's sort of the context in which it was discussed at the trial, I think.
And I would argue that there's another angle here, which I haven't seen discussed, but it's been a theory for a long time, is that one of the things that drives rankings is sort of co-occurring brand searches with a sort of category keyword, right? So if you have like, REI hiking boots, then REI ranks very well for the hiking boots keyword as well. And in order for that signal to work, you also need to amass a huge amount of users and a huge amount of data, to the same. So the same comment about how these deals sort of reinforce Google's market position. So I think brand signals are another, again, sort of pretty obvious ranking factor to those of us who have been in SEO for a long time, that are significantly influenced by the size of data that Google has access to. And I don't recall if Google has ever commented publicly on that, but it's another area of this trial that I think should be getting some attention. So
it's not unlike quality raters in a certain way, or training a large language model, where you need that feedback loop in order to refine the results.
Which they've done in spades now with various AI implementations in search. I don't even remember all the names of these things, but
BERT and MUM and RankBrain, and
we'll have to get Marie Haynes on as a guest. She seems to be the ultimate chronicler of these things. So.
Right.
Well, and the testimony also in the trial was that Google relied very heavily on these click and behavioral signals in the past, but now with AI they need less and less user data. Now that I guess these models are trained, they need less and less user data in order to do ranking. So the implication is that they're moving away from
they only need 3 months of data rather than
right.
3 years of data now, right? So they agreed to throw it away after 3 months, right?
Well, it'll be, and also the data is going to be very personalized. Greg, you and I had an offline discussion several months ago when I was testing Bard sort of as soon as it came out, and it was very clearly using my search history to give me results for categories that I was searching in again. And I think that's, Mike, to your point, like they don't need maybe the sort of horizontal level of search data that they needed previously, but the longer you've been a Google user and the more addicted to Google you've been, probably the better your results are going to be. So there is a sort of entrenchment advantage there as well. So.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.